is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
And I just marvel, that something that crude, in today's perspective, could have actually given us so much enjoyment and hope about the future.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Fred Parr was a member of MACE, the Michigan Atari Computer Enthusiasts group, and the man who printed the club newsletter. You can find scans of the newsletter at archive.org. There'll be a link in the show notes. This interview took place on April 22, 2016. In it, we discuss Arlan Levitan, whom I previously interviewed.
Well, yeah, I got into it fairly early. I also had a small printing company at the time, and we had just gotten our first Wang computer with a gigantic half a megabyte fixed and half a megabyte removable disk drive. And
wow.
We thought we were on the top of the world to do our accounting and bookkeeping. And so that was, that was sort of one of my introductions to the fabulous world of non-big name computer user ability. In other words, personal computing, actually, on an affordable scale. So I can't really tell you for sure where I met up with Arlan to begin with. It was probably in, some high-tech computer store at the time. But we did start, I just looked up my old newsletters, and back in January 14th of 1981, we had our first meeting, and it was called the Great Unnamed Atari Association, and we had a local microcomputer store, and it was pretty interesting. There were, I think, a dozen or 24 people that showed up for the meeting, and then by, I think it was June, we actually had gotten the name Michigan Atari Computer Enthusiasts, or MACE, and we were publishing newsletters, and it was a really fabulous time. I mean, back in those days, all you had available to the consumer were something from IBM, an 8086 chip. Apple had their original personal computer. There was the Commodore PET. And then, of course, we had the infamous, or famous, maybe I should say, Atari 600 and 800 personal computers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just very exciting. I can remember back in those days, we used to publish software code, for our own games and stuff. And, boy, if you had one colon or semicolon in the wrong place, or put in a comma where there should have been a semicolon, the whole thing crashed. It just plain wouldn't run. So then you have to go back through the entire program trying to figure out what the heck you did wrong. But things have changed an awful lot from those days. I think for the Atari 800, which had upgradable RAM memory,
yeah.
I think we were paying something like $100 and change for a 16 kilobyte card. And you could fit, if memory serves me right, 3 of them in the chassis for a whopping 48 kilobytes. Holy cow. And then I look at my cell phone now, and it's got more computing power than several hundred of those machines ever could, and much faster processing. So it was the dawn of a whole new age, and guys like Arlan and I, we could see that there was a huge future in this, just because people would no longer be shackled with the old pen and paper sort of manipulations that we used to do, things like spreadsheets. Well, we didn't actually even call them, I don't think we called them spreadsheets until, who was it, Lotus 123 came out?
Probably VisiCalc, I think.
VisiCalc, yep,
yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just amazing. I mean, we were all just amazed that these little chips could do so much stuff, and that you could actually, by writing code for them or talking their language, you could actually get them to do basically what you wanted to do. And we created, for the time, some pretty snazzy-looking games. Although I know there were other guys that were doing other things with them, but
did you write games yourself?
No, I wasn't that sharp. I would just look at the other magazines and copy their code. I think I had a subscription to some service that came once a month or something.
So you had a printing company. So I guess so tell me about. I mean, you guys were starting this group, and I guess it was obvious that it fell to you that you'd print the newsletter because you had the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that, and for how long did you do that?
Oh, sure. We, as I say, we thought this was a fabulous new endeavor, something had never been seen before. And we rapidly grew. Like I say, well, let's see, the first newsletter was about a dozen pages, corner stapled together at the upper left-hand corner. That was back in 81, June of 81. And let's see, that went on for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got gradually better. We moved from a dot matrix printer to having somebody set some of the type for us, which was nice. And then let me see, by looks like January of 1982, we were actually producing a saddle stitch booklet, which is like a typical magazine format that you see now. And it started out as just black and white and moved on. And by March of 82, we were starting to produce the covers in 2 colors and the rest in black and white. But, I mean, we really thought we were accomplishing something back then because it was, we tried to keep track of what was going on, in cities and states around us, and nobody had anything that we were aware of that even competed with this. And I think we got our membership up to, maybe a couple hundred people. I'm not, Arlan would probably be better able to address that, but we had an awful lot of input from an awful lot of people, and we would publish, articles. Well, we actually had a couple of sponsors. There was a company in Troy, Michigan, of all places, called K-Byte, that actually had produced a game called Crazy Shootout, and they bought ad space from us. And then there was the Family Computer Center, which was a local, computer company. And it was actually starting to grow, and we could see it was growing, and, people did regular contributions to the magazine. Oh, yeah, here's another one from Right Way Enterprises. None of these companies are even in business anymore, I don't think. Either that or they've morphed into something entirely different. But it was just quite an exceptional time, and I think we published the newsletter for a couple of years. I didn't really get the last. I can't think what the last copy was, but and then at that point, I think everything was moving so fast, and the advancement of technology was moving so fast that it was just getting beyond us, I think, to just think about the Atari computer alone. But it was fabulous times.
I bet. Yeah, I've scanned a few copies that have come across my way, and I enjoy looking at them. There's some snarkiness with the marketing manager of online systems that I really enjoy, where he's yelling at you guys for having advertisers that are selling pirated copies of his software.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just plus all the just a little how-tos and reviews and stuff.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So, which brings me to, I'm wondering if I can borrow the rest of that pile that sounds like you have, so I can scan everything, and because you've got some great Atari history there that has not been archived yet, and I would like to put it up on Internet Archive for the world.
Wow. Well, I think we could probably arrange to do something like that. Either that or I can scan it in for you and send it to you, which would save an awful lot of parcel post, I think.
Sure, but whatever you prefer, but it would be it's a lot of work, I think, to scan all those magazines. So I'm more invested than you are, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll get your email address, and I'll go down and actually see what we're talking about. There is quite a pile
Sure.
of information here, and I'd be happy to share it with the community at large. It's kind of interesting. Years later, after we stopped having the meetings and publishing, I bought an old, actually a new copy, a new release of, what was the first Atari game console?
The 2600?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. I bought one of those just for nostalgia, and I look back at the graphics and stuff and the complexity of the game, and I just marvel, that something that crude, in today's perspective, could have actually given us so much enjoyment and hope about the future. And I don't think any of us at the time could have imagined what this whole personal computing thing and the ability of these microchips to process data could become. I mean, I joke nowadays that I've got a camera in my pocket that I can actually send email with. I mean, it's
Right.
become one of these things. They started out as phone devices, and now they're cameras and they're navigation instruments, and they do so many other things besides just make and receive phone calls that it truly is amazing. And the fact that we could see that something was coming, although we couldn't imagine that it would be that incredible, was, I guess, pretty insightful of us. Maybe that sounds a little braggadocious.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah, no, and the way that you guys were experimenting with, here's a circuit that'll make the computer talk, and I mean, you were exploring everything that it could do. So it was amazing.
There was a company early on, and you probably know the name of them. It just slips my mind right at the moment. That was working on speech recognition, and they never did get it to the point where it was really accurate and repeatable. But now, my particular cell phone is an iPhone, and Siri does a halfway decent job of listening to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's entirely accurate and repeatable yet, but it's certainly better.
It's not. It's not. No, it misses inflections, and it picks up road noise and stuff. But it's just, that, and they say language is one of the hardest things to build into a computer because it requires so much coding for inflection and whether you have a cold or not, or, time of day, that sort of thing. But, and you can just imagine we're going from the early 80s, and now we're some 36 years later, and you see what we have now, and you can only imagine what the next decade will bring. I mean, I joke about this, but I honestly think that probably within the next couple of decades, when the child is born, they'll be inserting a tiny little microchip behind its neck, and that will not only provide identification but connection with the internet. If they even call it the internet, then who knows?
Right.
But I just think it's absolutely incredible. The interesting thing is the internet actually put my printing business out of business because my largest accounts were automotive, being in the Detroit area, and I used to print millions of brochures, say, for instance, for the North American Auto Show that was held in Detroit. Well, when the internet started becoming popular, my buyers would come to me and say, well, we don't need 1 million copies of that brochure anymore. We only need 500,000 because we got this thing, we put up this website on the internet. And I'm going, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And the next year they come back and say, well, we don't need 500,000 this year. We only need, like 250,000 because this website is really kind of starting to take off. And that was kind of, that along with a few other things, kind of spelled the demise of a lot of commercial printers because they just, nowadays, everybody goes to the internet to get their information. And that's been a huge blessing, even for me. I'm a realtor now, but I can get an awful lot of information off of my internet services. But it did kind of help to spell the demise of the printing company. So what are you going to do, right? Life goes on. Oobla-dee, oobla-da.
Need to move on. Yep.
Yep. So that's about the most that my poor old brain can remember.
All right. Well, that was great.
It is just astounding.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, and please send me an email,
Sure.
and we'll figure out a way either to scan these in for you, or I'll send you the whole big batch.
Great.
And you can scan them in. All right, take care now.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.